For what it's worth, rather than the interpretation of what how it's being spun politically. Which is,
the thing I'd add to that is where there is a lot of politics, there's a great phrase in politics that says, if you have to explain yourself, you've already lost. So in an organization where there's nuance, where there's debate, where there's some need to focus on the detail, someone else that has those political remarks, those catchy, appealing, populist remarks is going to win over the "it depends" or "hang on a second, we've got to go into this detail."
Of course, yeah.
And so you've got all these human biases and prejudices that undermine software development. And at the end of the day, software development should be a science. It should be evidence-based. It should be the facts should emerge, but they're often not allowed to, because people can play the political game at a much faster speed than you can develop good software.
Yeah, and that's why people are afraid of event modeling, is because we're doing you've argued that for the last 3 days. Here's the opposite.
Exactly.
And it works, and it's working software. So I think a lot of middle management sees event modeling as a threat because it allows that movement. I think I tweeted earlier that we had a project that's about 18 months in, and all of a sudden the requirement is, okay, this is no longer a mobile only app. Now it needs to have service backend, and that's where the work's going to be done. Entirely different architecture. And one developer, 3 days, there you go. What's next? Like, that would just destroy other companies. So if you do work with a proper event model, and you do have event sourcing done properly, and you are using something that will run everywhere. I mean, these days it's Go and a bunch of other languages that can do that. You got a lot of Kotlin that's moving in that direction. In our case, it's JavaScript. You can have JavaScript running pretty much anywhere, as long as it's not using anything fancy in terms of the libraries. It was one dev, 3 days, and it would just be like a no answer from any other company. It's like, now, well, we kind of developed this to be a mobile app. You're kind of asking impossible stuff here. So 18 months in, a fundamental requirements change that just would flip something upside down. That's why I'll never work any of the traditional ways anymore. It's hopeless when you look at it from this angle. And people say that I'm spoiled, that you're lucky that you're able to do that. It's like, no, I'm not spoiled. This is 12 years of like blood, sweat, and tears, politically, financially, you name it. It's just not been easy. And basically, shouting at from the mountaintops, wearing your heart on your sleeve, getting help from people that you didn't know would even help. Like, I mean, we were in dire straits a few years ago, and someone out of the blue said, here's X amount of thousands of dollars for your rent and all that, just to get through this part. And I never even asked. So people do see it, right? And it's great. And it's always going to be that 5%, the leading edge. A lot of industries don't want to move forward because that's where their money is. Their money is where things were. There's that inertia of business. You still have people pushing for coal mines to be expanded, right? And that's not a new energy. That's an energy source that's not very good for us. It puts smoke in the air that harms our lungs and warms up the planet. But people are pushing for it. They go, oh, no, don't believe that crap. It's the same thing. No, don't believe in event modeling. That's just, that's not proven. Like, yeah, we have proof. Don't worry. So anyway, traditional stuff. I wanted to show, well, I guess I did show some of it with this. That triangle has to be a square. That testing triangle. The unit tests at the tip of the pyramid, and the unit tests, that actually has to be a square. You should have the same amount of unit tests as you have integration tests. However, your integration tests shouldn't be what you traditionally think of when you're thinking about integration tests. They should be highly focused on to-do lists and artifacts that show the integration. So the abstraction of the integration has to exist. And you have this with an event model. People don't realize that those green boxes do capture long-running workflows or a proper piece of state for a long-running workflow. And that is good enough if you have an event model, if you have a small design up front, that you understand your information completely, you know where information comes from, where it goes to, what are the valid transformations of that information, then you're good. You can treat an integration like a unit test, right? Without any fancy, mock frameworks, all that kind of stuff. So there is no need for dependency injection frameworks, etc. And this stuff just continues to scale with different infrastructures. You have abstracted how information changes over time. I'm guessing how that relates back to, traditional, back to, what we started off with here in terms of the topic. We were talking about, what does the BA do now? Can what a BA does be done by a developer? Yep, absolutely. We've done that. We've never had a BA in the 5 years. We've never had a BA role. The BA role, quote unquote, is a concept that exists when you're talking to the stakeholder who has the money and is asking for the features with the person that's going to deliver those features. There is no need for any level of indirection with a healthy team. And basically they say, well, what about, there's other side of things like, oh, there's not enough time for developers to talk about that. You know where you get that time back for them to talk to that is by eliminating the stand-ups, eliminating the planning sessions. That planning session is required because of this emergent design, right? You still want to plan your next sprint or whatever. I mean, don't even get me started how sprints destroy things. Generally it's misapplied, and you have 1 day left for a QA because everyone's trying to not look as bad as the next guy. So everyone takes a bite that's way too big to chew because they don't want to be the one that only got 5 story points done that sprint. They're the next ones that are on the chopping block. It's a nasty control mechanism. It's nothing positive that's being spun about it. And Scrum, by definition, is something you do when you're in an emergency situation to solve things. It's done when there's a natural disaster and you have to have quick plans. War room, Scrum, all these things are kind of related. And so what you're asking a company to do is to work in a high stress situation for the lifetime of anyone's career in there. Are you kidding me? That's going to have the people the small percentage of psychopaths that like to work that way be successful. You're going to base that, instead of having good people that enjoy their work, are true craftspeople that are dedicated. They're no longer able to play because they're not psychopaths. Great. What kind of company are you making, right? So it's just horrible.
Exactly. And what you've just said, I mean, it literally is the antithesis of my view that it should be how you like to work personally scaled up to a team. If you're seeing this gamification of story points and estimations, if you're seeing people struggling to converge at the end of a sprint, if you're seeing people burning out, that's not how you would want to work personally. So it's giving you a signal. This is not the right way. Either you're interpreting the methodology wrong, or you shouldn't be following that methodology at all. But either way, there should be an alarm bell ringing that this is not the right way.
I think I've given up on the methodology. I think there's enough room for nasty people to operate that I don't want to even call it that. If I want to have, retrospectives was brought up a lot of times. Well, I think retrospectives are a good thing. It's we should always be, reflecting on how we're doing things and improve. I don't need a meeting for that, and I don't need a structure that every 2 weeks I'm going to have a retrospective. If it's important, you'll do it. Whatever methodology you have should incorporate a natural way for improvements to be communicated. And I think if we look at things with this small design up front and having state transitions as something that are done a certain way, if there's a better way, that's immediately shared. It's solidified in code that, hey, we're going to do testing this way, or we're going to do publish subscribe this way, or here's a better way to do a read model. Sure, awesome. The whole team can just copy that, copy paste it, do that. And how
It's a
that
fairly
is,
natural process, though, isn't it? Because
it
people will
isn't part of the
naturally
process. Like
share. Yeah.
it's just done. And I think the best example I have is, as over the 5 years, as we improve our infrastructure for each project, you know how we copy paste each project and then just change it according to the event model to kind of act that way. The old projects get improved all the time, because if we made some improvements in the infrastructure, that infrastructure folder just gets copied to the old
Yeah, exactly.
project, and they get all the benefits of that. If now it's running in the cloud, or now it's running on a different cloud, we have now, you know, Google Compute as well as AWS. We now support, you know, Kafka along with Event Store. Cool. That's just another folder, another thing in the config that we can turn on and do. And if a client needs that, their 2-year-old or 3-year-old project that was just running, you know, maybe on local files for now, they're like, hey, we're really successful. We need to run this, scale this out. We need to run it on this, that, and the other. It's like, yeah, that we have that, copy paste, the whole thing runs, right? Those are those 3 days change your entire architecture things that are just
And developers
impossible
tend
with
to
other
do that,
ways.
don't they? I mean, developers tend to, if they're still actively engaged or actively owning a project, they tend to take those ideas back from their colleague or the next project which has already taken it forward. That it tends to happen when
Yeah,
developers are working in a way in which they've got room to a little bit of space to breathe on a daily basis.
absolutely. And I think where you get rid of the you know, it's like someone made the analogy that this is like slave driving. Like, you have people working in cotton fields, and the PMs and the agilistas are the whip crackers, and someone finds out, hey, I want to, and you know, it actually is a control thing. Someone finds out how to, you know, pick cotton faster, and the guy with the whip says, well, there's going to be less need for me if this person is picking 5 times as much cotton. So just, you know, silence them, you know, trade them away to another owner or whatever, right? It's just, it's kind of like, I hate to use the analogy, but it's really bad. People have that reaction when they're talking about working in those environments. So you need something that is not subjective, where the work stands on its own. And that's why the slices are a great way to do that, especially if you can pay people for these slices on an average. And so people love to self-organize around this. So I've seen our team say, hey, it looks like you've done too few slices. Would you like a couple of these easy ones? Because you're probably not going to make as much money as me. And they love to work with one another. They actually help each other. It's where the self-organizing team actually has skin in the game to to take care of one another. And so no one wants to be seen as the greedy person taking all the easy slices and getting paid for half the project, and the rest of the guys slave away at the, you know, the other half, having to divide it up against one another. Guess what? That type of person is out very quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And you're allowing that. I guess it's kind of like how that flat org is made easier if you do have a non-subjective way of organizing the work and having that feedback of like, this is either working or not. So removing the subjectivity is key. And you mentioned this earlier. This is about having it be more scientific, be more like an engineering practice. Absolutely. That is the goal of this whole thing, of how we work, why event modeling exists, is that we make it scientific. We don't want to like wave our hands and make meetings and see how you feel. I want to see the direct results of how the solution is better. Who got paid for it? Is that a fair amount to be paid for that? Make it as transparent as possible. There's like nowhere for someone to hide information from anyone else. And that's why we were quite happy to just have developers talk right to the client. Like, you want to talk to the client? No problem. The client wants to talk to you? No problem. Everyone knows what page they stand. There is no salaries to hide from another. There's a set rate for each slice. Like, I don't need to say anything to anyone. There is no secrecy. It's wonderful. And I'd love to just continue to work this way for the rest of my life. And I wouldn't want to retire if I know that other people are learning from this and making a better place for their organizations to, you know, so that their employees are happier and all that. So it's I don't think I'll retire, because I see there's a lot of good that can be done if I just continue going this way. And you know, yeah, I love what I do, and I'll continue because it's obviously it's helping a few people, so I'll continue.
Awesome. Right, I'm going to shut up for a bit because I've said quite a bit, so someone else can chime in.
I know that
Thanks,
other
guys.
people aren't in the same position, right? So I have to not squander this and communicate it as best as I can, so that people get, you know, maybe people are on the verge where they can do that in their organization, and this is the last little push that they need. It's like, oh, cool, I got some like guidance of how to do this, and so they'll be able to do it. Whereas without this, they would have been like, oh, almost made it. Maybe I'll do it at the next place, and then it's, yeah, that doesn't happen, right? So. How
Yeah,
much was I
Adam,
paid for the last slice? I try to give the slices to the guys. I don't want to take their money. But depends on on your velocity. I think we have, I think we're around 2,000 a slice, but that includes UI and everything. And then, you know, we try to take our costs with our guys is somewhere in the middle there. It could be anywhere from 50% of that to just being 30%, depending on how many projects we are, but we always try to keep competitive, getting that profit margin to be something that sustains the company, pays for our office, pays for all the services and things like that. So you can adjust that quite well. And then obviously, if you have overseas development, you can adjust that for the rates there. Which is a touchy subject, right? People say that you should be, no matter where you, you know, where you work, you should be paid what the job pays, right? So that's an interesting issue that's going to come up more and more, especially as more people are open to remote working. You're going to have a lot of this. Yeah. So it's a great question. Thomas asked, how much were you paid for last slice, right? So. Oh yeah, we can, so let's take a look at the last, let's just share the screen here again. I'll show you a typical slice of what that means. And it's very easy. In an event model, in an event source system, it's either a read model or a command handler. That's it. That's a slice. And sometimes those are reused in your workflow. So the slice actually, developing one slice will kind of like do a portion of another one, and you can use estimates to make sure that you you know, responsibly pay people for that. You know, sometimes let's just zoom out here. So a slice is, I'll just remove these edits. I think this was on the timeline before. Someone's moved it, but okay. So a slice is something like this. I enter in some time, and I mark the slices. Adam doing this slice. This is the slice I'm working on, and this is the command. The Mario signifies I'm doing it in .NET on Linux, and there's my event that I do that. So all of this should be done, and whoever's doing the previous slice should be able to integrate with mine. So that's basically it. But in a nutshell, when you're pricing out projects, it's each type of command and each type of read model. And you get a velocity, a really, really good velocity for this after many projects. And if you're working in a company, you'll have your velocity for your team and your stack. And now, if you have everyone bought into doing things this way, then you can get a really good estimate for that. If you just do an event model and just identify how many state transitions you're going to have, right? And how many state views you're going to have, you're going to have a really good idea of how long that's going to take. A lot of times the work for the UI actually is a bit more. And so sometimes in one project, our UI consisted of 2/3 of the price of a slice. So in other words, you were expected to, if you only did this command handler, you would get paid 1/3 of the slice. And then if you did the UI, you would get paid in thirds of that, because there's 2 revisions that you would allow. So you'd have the first kind of thing that works, which may be ugly and just kind of, use the default, CSS. And then you would get whatever the client wanted for what it would look like, and you'd change that. You get paid another third of that third, and then you'd get complete payment for there was always one last thing when the whole system was there and say, this kind of doesn't flow that well. Can you change the UI to have this in this position? That was the last pass. So we used to divide up slices that finely, but now we just basically do everything for one price, and then do those things when they're needed after. So if someone says I need UI changes, they're part of the guarantee and included thing, but we just pay up front. We don't split the payments like that.
So the projection logic would be part of the read model / UI slice?
Yep. Yeah, this right here, this part, it's displayed here. So this would be the part that I would write. I would make the event handler for any events that, happened that would populate this. And that would be that would be another slice, right? So if I was getting paid $1,000 a slice, I would make $2,000 if I finished these in 1 week, right? And yeah, so this system actually is kind of meta, because we want to change this from being time and materials reporting to have another one that's per slice reporting, to have something that integrates with ONote, which would give you code generation, but also an ability to track and pay people for what they did, which would be kind of cool, right? So you're really, really automating systems, and the timeline really solves a lot of this code gen stuff as well. Yeah, so
my observation is that in terms of ONote, you're thinking in terms of that middle gap between interfaces and events. You're thinking when it's a command, the user interface that feeds into that command and the processing of the command. And then when it's a read model, it's the events that feed into that read model and the user interface it's reflected onto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And then my next question was, are you actively watching out for people gamifying your approach? Okay, cool.
Of course. So there's another little chart that shows there's really stupid slices, like really easy ones. Like your login. I'm just gonna copy the login that worked in the last one, and I'm gonna get paid $2,000 for like copy pasting something. So we definitely don't do this. There is a Kanban way of prioritizing this. You should not be starting with a login as your first slice you're implementing, because it's the least value in the whole event model for your client. What you're starting with is the most complex stuff, which is going to be the most effort. And so there's a declining curve to the actual time that it takes to make a slice work. And the stupid stuff is your dessert. In other words, you're always going to not have a death march. You're going to have a very nice way to end the project where the thing really works and the customer's already satisfied. You're just taking care of, the last things. In fact, because those slices are easy to do, because there's a guarantee on the more complex ones, you're using a bit of the time that's afforded by the easy slices to go in and fix things you may have missed, right? Because we guarantee that this functionality will work. And so whoever developed that slice has to go in and fix that for free. And so to answer your question, you have this natural carrot and stick scenario where if someone goes super fast to finish the complicated stuff, and they get paid for 4 slices and they make $4,000 in a few days, well, guess what? Next week they're just fixing bugs and they're getting nothing, right? Because they went too fast. And that guarantee is passed on through to the subcontractors. They have the same guarantee to me that if I say, hey, it's not doing what the event model shows, go fix it before you do anything else. You're not getting paid unless those things are fixed. So that's the way you have the carrots and sticks, and it's fully transparent. No one can hide behind doing crappy work. It's either doing what the event model says it's doing or it's not. You can hold one again, you can hold it up against the light, and that's why it's a really good done is done, right? I'm either seeing this thing work exactly like this. I should be able to walk through that event model and the implemented system and do the same thing. And the data should match one for one. Obviously dates change or whatever, but it should match one for one to all the places that data is held, all the transformations of data would look the same. And if it's not, well, whoever worked on that, they have to fix it. But that's how you have a really good done is done. That's how you have no surprises. That's how you don't have these projects that are 90% done, 95% done, 98% done. It's like, man, you guys said you were done like 2 months ago at 90% on a 3-month project, and now it's month 5, and now you're 98% done. And then a year from now you're going to tell me you're 99% done. And the nice thing with working with the reason these slices are vertical is that you can always show working software. So even when you have one slice done and you have to see just, I'm storing one event based on these, given when thens and this type of transformation, I can either have placeholders for previous screens that are just quick click-throughs. If I'm using a read model, I can stuff in some dummy events that have the exact data. They're not like blank events. They're events that are literally pulled from the event model. That will populate that read model properly. It's just there's nothing really generating them yet, but that's what will be generated when those other slices are done. So you can run the idea is that you can run the entire solution when one slice is done and actually see that piece work. And there is no aligning the planets, right? And that's why that unit test works for the integration level, because you've abstracted the long-running workflows to be to actually be something that's tangible. It's not something that's artificially, shoehorned in at the last moment to try and get everything to work together. You're conscious of what this, what the context is overall at all times, and so it doesn't get again back to small design up front, right? I want this to be the equivalent of a sequence diagram without being as onerous as a sequence diagram. I don't want to have in my event model a box for a class and some line for a method, right? I mean, some of them do map to that, like issuing a command. It's like calling a method on an object, but it doesn't matter. It's just moving information. I mean, if you go to the original definition of it was message passing. When I call a method, it's really passing a message to the object to do this, right? That's the original 60s paper on OO. So even if you look at the roots of UML, this type of diagram still fits it.
So just moving towards the tail end of the sort of thing you've been describing, the systems you're building this way, do you still have customers saying, I want an overview page, a dashboard, where you're starting to compose lots of summary information together in one place? And if you do, both from an event modeling perspective and also from your billing perspective, how do you do that composition?